What is up, guys? T-Man here, and today I'm here to talk about the VGC 18 format with you guys. Yes, I am back from Worlds and back from Regionals. Took a little bit of break to focus on those, but now we're here to talk about VGC 18, and I know a lot of people are concerned because Megas are back. And some people are happy, some people are kind of upset about this, and I just want to talk about Megas for a little bit. I think they did a phenomenal job balancing the Megas, so I'm going to break that down a little bit. I also want to talk about what would potentially happen if certain legendaries are allowed in the format or not allowed in the format, since there are currently no Landorus, Heatran, Cresselia able to be caught in Gen 7, and one of the stipulations of the rule set is you have to use Pokemon that were caught in this generation. So I expect we will probably get a lot, if not all, of these Pokemon in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but in the very real case that we don't, I kind of want to break down what would potentially happen and what would that kind of mean for the format. So going to talk about that all in the video, so stay tuned, guys, and let's get started. So I want to start off by talking about a lot of things that were either nerfed or buffed in Generation 7, and most of them have to do with Mega Evolution, which was something I was very, very happy to see. I think they did a really, really good job at reducing the power level of some of these top Megas while also keeping them still very, very relevant, still very, very good in the format. And they also brought a few of the lower, very, very good, but not quite there Mega Evolutions up to the higher tier, so to speak, of Mega Evolutions. So the first Pokemon up is Mega Kangaskhan, which was definitely the hardest hit of any of the Mega Evolutions in my opinion. And I think they did a fantastic job with Kangaskhan. The complaint with Kangaskhan was always that it was overwhelming and restricting and really, really hard to deal with. The fact that it was fast, it was bulky, it had Fake Out, which is just a really, really good tool for any team to have. All those combined with the fact that it was such a hard hitter made it a very, very overwhelming mon to deal with. But I think they did the correct thing in reducing its damage output. I think that was definitely the place if you're going to attack it anywhere to attack it. And they changed Parental Bond's damage output from 1.5 times damage all the way down to 1.25 times damage. So I think that's a very, very good change. It kind of makes so that Kangaskhan can't pick up a lot of the knockouts it used to. You have to invest less bulk into living Kangaskhan, which was a very, very common benchmark for things to hit. So I think that's all good. I think the other very, very key change is that Power Punch is no longer a learnable move by Kangaskhan Generation 7. The only way to learn Power Punch was through TMs, and Power Punch was one of the few TMs that was removed in Generation 7, and as I mentioned earlier, you do need to catch all of your Pokemon in VGC 18 in the Alola region, just like with any of the last few formats. And with that, Kangaskhan can no longer learn Power Punch, and that was one of the main things you always have to worry about with Kangaskhan. If you let it get Power Punches off, it would kind of steamroll you, run you over, and there wasn't really too much you could do about that once it got going. But now you're worrying about return low kick, Sucker Punch, or coverage move and Fake Out. I think that's a lot easier to deal with, knowing that a boosting option is never going to be there again for Kangaskhan. I think the closest you have to that now is probably like Swagger stuff with Feeny and Misty Terrain. So that's definitely a welcome change. Sucker Punch base power is also changed down from 80 to 70, which definitely hurts since you are combining multiple nerfs to Kangaskhan in the damage output of Parental Bond with Sucker Punch. So Sucker Punch from Kangaskhan not dealing nearly as much damage as it used to. I think these are all pretty good changes. I think that since it still keeps Kangaskhan as the #1 Mega in the format by far, it's still a top 5 Pokemon in usage on Battlespot doubles right now. And yeah, I think it was just a very, very good change overall. I think the damage output being nerfed is something that doesn't kill the Pokemon entirely, but it still makes it a much more bearable Pokemon. Next up, I want to talk about Mega Salamence and Mega Gardevoir. So Both of these Pokemon took hits to their abilities. Aerialate, Pixelate, and also Refrigerate were nerfed. They took the power boost from moves affected by these abilities down from 30% to 20%. And for Salamence, I think this is a very, very good change. I think that if you look at the format, look at 15 and 16, Kangaskhan and Salamence were by far the two Pokemon that you say, okay, these have too high damage output. These Mega Evolutions are a little bit too powerful compared to the rest of them. And I think that the damage reduction kind of brings them onto the same page as a lot of the other Mega Evolutions. Still definitely stronger than the rest of the field, I believe, but I think it's a very, very welcome change that we'll happily take. Gardevoir, on the other hand, got hit pretty hard here because not only is it trying to compete now with a reduction to its damage output, but we also received a load of new fairies in the Tapus and Sun and Moon. So now Gardevoir is trying to contend with the team slot on the team for fairies, and that's either meaning that you're not running a Tapu, which means you cannot contend for terrain control. You cannot contest an opposing terrain, which is a huge theme in the 17 format. I expect it to continue in the 18 format. And then as well as your other option is just running Gardevoir or Sylveon next to one of these Tapus, and you're just compounding a very, very bad weakness to have. I think if any team is focusing on like one set of Pokemon to beat, it's probably the Tapus. So you're just getting bunched in there if you're a Gardevoir, if you're a Sylveon with those. And I think it's just a very, very bad target to have on your back, especially if you're receiving a pretty big nerf to your power, to your damage output. So I don't know if Gardevoir really survives this. Salamence is fine. Salamence is still top 3, top 4 Mega, I think. Has a damage output still. Probably will have access to Tailwind. So very, very strong in that aspect. Gardevoir and Sylveon, for that matter, I think pretty hard hit. I don't know how well they do in this format. The last nerf Pokemon I want to talk about is Thundurus, which, oh my god, is so bad now. It went from being a top 4 Pokemon in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire Battle Spot doubles to not being in the top 30 in Sun and Moon Battle Spot doubles. And it has a lot to do with the fact that Thunder Wave and Paralysis in general got nerfed into the ground. Thunder Wave going down from 100 down to 90 accuracy just means it's far less consistent, which might have been fine if the Paralysis speed nerf didn't also kill it. Paralysis used to quarter a Pokemon's speed and now only halves speed, which is far less potent. It means that fast mons will still outspeed most of the slow, like base 50, 60 speed mons after a Thunder Wave, and overall it's just not nearly as good. It can be counteracted by Tailwind, that kind of stuff. The other big thing for Thundurus is that it's now competing for slots on teams with both Tapu Koko and Zapdos. Tapu Koko being introduced, of course, in the Sun and Moon, but Zapdos also got a new tool in Seeds, and Psychic Seed and Misty Seed make Zapdos a very, very scary Pokemon to deal with, and because of that, Thundurus is now trying to play in a format with these two mons that it just doesn't fit on teams anymore. It's being outclassed. It's not as good as them, so it's not going to see nearly as much usage. So overall, it's just not nearly as good. I don't see it picking up usage anytime soon, and it'll probably stay that way for the entire format. So along with the nerfs, we also got some buffs. The big thing is that they changed how Mega Evolution speed works. You now get a speed boost on turn 1 if you're a Pokemon that gets a speed boost from your Mega Evolution. So something like Metagross, which has a base 70 speed without the Mega Evolution. When it Mega Evolves, it gets 40 points and goes up to 110 speed. It is now 110 speed on the turn that it Mega Evolves. You used to have to wait a turn just because of how speed used to be calculated. It used to be calculated at the beginning of the turn, then you'd Mega Evolve. So at the beginning of the turn, you had base 70 speed, so now you have base 70 throughout the entire turn, whereas now they recheck Mega Evolution sometime during the turn, which means that Metagross gets checked for 110 speed now later in the turn, and it gets the 110 speed for the entirety of the turn, which is great for Metagross, because that means that it now can outspeed a lot of things that would have to protect in front of on turn 1. Stuff like Hydreigon or Landorus or Volcarona, that kind of stuff. It now outspeeds those things, so if you want to try and deal with them offensively, maybe try and set up a substitute in their face, you can do that now. It's definitely a very welcome change that Metagross definitely benefits from, and I think it pushes Metagross more towards Kangaskhan and Salamence now. I think it's definitely a much better Mon, and with the nerfs to Kang and Salamence, I think it's right up there. Not quite as good as Kang and Mence, but it's super close now. I think it's a really, really good Mon. The other big one was Swampert. So the way that Mega Evolution speeds work now, for what I understand, I could be wrong on this, but this is how I understand it. So basically what happens is the turn will start, speeds are set, then switching happens, then Mega Evolution happens, and then right there, Mega Evolution speeds are reset. So with that in mind, if you switch in a Mon with Drizzle on the turn that Mega Swampert Mega Evolves, it gets the speed boost from Swift Swim on that turn, which is absolutely huge because no other Swift Swim like Mon in the game can do that. If you switch in a Drizzle Mon, you're not getting a Swift Swim boost that turn. But since Swampert rechecks the speed on the Mega Evolution after the Mon switches in, Swampert gets the speed boost that turn and is able to, kind of do some surprise plays by switching in, Pelipper or Politoed and just getting the speed boost that turn. It also just makes it a much more versatile way to play Rain overall. So Swampert definitely seeing some usage now. It's a very, very strong Pokemon that was always on the fringe of seeing big usage, but now with that change, it's definitely a very scary, threatening Mon to deal with. So I want to briefly talk about what would happen if any of these Mons weren't legal for use in the VGC 2018 format. This would only happen if they're not able to be caught in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And I do think that we will be able to get most, if not all, of these Pokemon. But in the chance that we do, it definitely affects the format in a huge way. Particularly stuff like Landorus and Heatran, which will always be in the very, very tops of usage. So not seeing those kind of Pokemon would cause some massive shakeups in usage, just because the reason why Pokemon like Landorus and Heatran are so good is because they fulfill multiple roles, and you really just can't replace them with one Pokemon. If you want a ground type, you have to run something like Garchomp. You can run Crocodile, which does both the intimidating and the ground typing, but with the bad weakness to Fairy and the lack of bulk on Crocodile, it's just a very underwhelming Pokemon. There's a reason why we don't see too much of it this year. And then we'd see much more variety, I think, with the Intimidators. You could just see a lot of Arcanine, but with Pokemon like Scrafty and Hitmontop, you'd probably see a wide variety of different Intimidators if we did not have Landorus in the format. I'm not going to go too much into all of these, but Heatran, like I said, Fire typing and Steel typing are both coveted slots for a team to have, and if you can fit them both into one slot in Heatran, that's phenomenal. But otherwise, you're forced to kind of split it up into multiple Mons, which isn't bad. We've seen Aegislash Volcarona see a lot of success in the past, but it's just a major inconvenience when team building. The rest of these Mons, all the mons on the right there for Zapdos and Suicune are Tailwind mons. The two on the left are just either electric types or bulky water types. Bulky water types just aren't nearly as good anyways, just because, in the past, your electric types and your grass types were like Amoonguss, Zapdos, and Thundurus. It's like those things didn't really hit your bulky waters that hard. Now you have Tapu Koko, which is going to just blow things up with Thunderbolt. So, like, being a bulky water with that around, with Kartana around now, like, it's just, it's not as important as far as, like, just being a water type, being a fat water type that could take a lot of hits. Now you actually have to be able to do something. Stuff like Suicune has Tailwind, has Icy Wind, can do that. I expect Jellicent maybe to pick up some of that. I don't even think that the bulky water slot really needs to exist right now. But, Feeney's seeing a lot of usage right now in Battle Spot doubles. It's seeing a lot of usage in 17 as well. So we'll see what happens. I expect Feeney to get Icy Wind, so if it does, that would pick up a lot of slack from other Icy Wind users not being in the format. And then, Thunderous Eye, as we said before, isn't even being used right now. So I just listed all of the top 30 legendary mons in ORAS right now. But, like, as of now, a lot of these mons, like Suicune and Thunderous Eye and Terrakion, just like aren't vital to the format. I think we'll survive without them if they weren't legal. I expect them to be legal. I expect all of these to be legal. There is a very real chance that they don't put some of these in the game, though. So, with that in mind, this is just a what-if scenario, and what would we do? That is it from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. These are just some of my preliminary thoughts on the VGC 18 format. So, if you enjoyed this, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm going to be posting some team building in the very, very near future. Building around some of the popular Battle Spot doubles cores that are doing well right now. So, if you're into that, make sure to subscribe. And that is it from me. I guess I'll see you guys next time.